Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. As always, we are powered by the great folks at Prize Picks. Back with me here on the Jungle Roar pod, the one and only Richard Skinner. Skinny, covering the Cincinnati Bengals, a longtime reporter on the beat. Skinny, 27-9, the Bengals beat the Bears in preseason game number 2. Yes, they're 2-0, but I think what Bengal fans should be most excited about and most encouraged about, and this is what I think the coaching staff is most encouraged about, is the quality depth on the roster. I don't think we have seen this. I know we haven't seen it in the last several years. If the star players were on the field for the Bengals, you knew they had a chance. Well, I see now wave after wave, not just on the defensive line, but throughout different position groups on the field. That's what really Saturday night was all about to me.
Yeah, maybe even the offensive line too, Mike. And I'm still going to question that depth across the offensive line. But let's face it was backups playing against Bears starters for a couple series. And the offensive line, I thought it held up. It wasn't great, but it held up pretty well. There were some interesting decisions across that offensive line we'll talk about. Yes. But yeah, to your point, there's going to be some tough roster decisions. Dante Myers was great. Does he even make this team, right? Landon Robinson was great. Does he even make this team? It's good problems to have. You don't all of a sudden want to get blown out with your backups playing against other backups or even the other team's starters. That group held their own. Do I think Josh Johnson can win you a game? Maybe a game, not longer term than that, but maybe a game. But hey, Josh Johnson was really good. For a 40-year-old guy on his 93rd team, he was pretty good.
He was. I want to get to the offensive line. Well, let's start there.
Sure.
Because some interesting decisions were made, like you said, and that one of which was bumping Cody Ford inside from the tackle position to starting right guard. And they wanted to take a look at Javon Foster, certainly on one side, and Jalen Rivers on the other. Now, Jalen Rivers has been a guard throughout most of camp, and they wanted to see him at tackle. And I thought they held up fairly well, like you said, on the outside. Look, Cody Ford had 2 false starts, I think it was, and 2 holding penalties in the first half. Not a good look, but again, I think he has a pretty solid spot on the roster. I don't know how you feel about that. I'd love to hear your take on that. But I think he's pretty solidly on. What I think the Bengals are trying to determine is whether or not it's worth keeping a 4th tackle. And is it Javon Foster? Is it Jalen Rivers, Andrew Coker, or somebody else?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that not only did Jalen Rivers play tackle, but he played left tackle, the most important tackle position for a right-handed quarterback. And
right.
This was a kid that last year, remember early in camp last year, they tried to play him at tackle. It was a disaster, and they said, all right, let's move you to guard. And they had a question mark situation at guard, at the right guard spot between Logan Patrick and obviously Dalton Reiser came in late, but he played in that opening game after Logan Patrick started. And then, Rivers eventually got kicked in there and then eventually lost his job. And so that one was really interesting to me because I really thought that they were convinced Cody was the swing tackle for the moment. And maybe they are. Maybe this was just a more, let's just see what we got in jail in case. Let's see what Cody still got at guard. And maybe they're not. I mean, I listened to the press conference afterwards, and Zac Taylor seemed very non-committal on anybody as the swing tackle at this point. I'm interested to see how this shakes out. I mean, let's not forget, cut down day comes. Maybe there's a tackle out there on the marketplace. I think that's a dangerous way to play this, to go get a swing tackle after cut down day because that guy has not been through your system. In fact, I even texted you last night. I said, wow, Jalen Rivers at LT? And it shocked me. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe it shocked you too. It shocked me to no degree. And I thought he held up pretty well. To your point about Cody did not hold up very well at guard. But if Cody thinks he's a swing tackle and somebody go, no, man, go play guard, that's a big ask too.
So that's kind of how it struck me. I could be totally wrong about that, given, like you said, what Zac Taylor's comments were to Kelsey Conway's question after the contest last night. But it's a big deal. I mean, we're going to spend a good amount of time here on the offensive line because that is one of the areas, right, Skinny, where people think that there is not a great amount of depth. And if somebody goes down on that offensive line, namely Orlando Brown Jr. or Amarius Mims, they've got to have a plan in place. And I think they are fairly confident that they know what they're going to do. There's one other possibility, and that is trading a player like Chris Jenkins Jr.
Right.
for a tackle if there's one out there or someone on the inside. But I think it would be for a tackle because that's the area of need. I don't know. My feeling right now is that they're going to keep 9 offensive linemen because they want to protect 5 tight ends. And I was talking with somebody walking out of the stadium last night. Maybe that's not the direction they go. Maybe they only keep the 4 tight ends and they keep 10. What's your sense on that right now?
Yeah, we talked about this last week, and I think that's one of the interesting roster decisions to make. I mean, I think Jack Endry put something on tape that another team's going to like. So do you expose him? Was there a sign that Tanner Hudson played last night that, hey, Tanner, thanks, man, you've been great, but you're expendable? And maybe that's the case. Tanner's a favorite of Joe Burrow, and I know that not every decision goes into Joe Burrow. I know everybody thinks that every decision goes into what does Joe Burrow want, but you can't keep them all. 5 tight ends is a luxury. Can this team afford a luxury? And I don't think they can. I think at the end of the day, I think you do keep 10 offensive linemen. I was wondering what they were going to do with Connor Lew, and Connor Lew plays last night, and Brian Parker played. I think Brian Parker might have played the whole game last night, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
Yeah,
he did.
And I don't know if that's a good sign or that's just a sign of, hey, we don't have a ton of guards, and they don't, so we're going to have to let the kid play, and he needs to get reps and all those things. I think 5 tight ends is too much of a luxury, Mike. I was more iffy than you were way back when about Jack Endry's 7th-round pick. Does it matter if you expose him? Does another team take him? Well, you put a touchdown on tape. It's pretty good to put a touchdown on tape.
Tight end's a pretty important position.
I agree with you. The only thing I would say is how many teams across the league are going, hey, let's get this guy as our 4th tight end. Do they look at that as a luxury? And so if you expose one of those guys, does a team take them even though you like them, even though we've seen them and go, man, that guy's pretty good? Do other teams look and say, yeah, because it is kind of a luxury to keep a 4th or 5th tight end in this league, and so it's a roll of the dice game to some degree.
So it's keeping Jack Endry's to me is not about this year. It's about down the road.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's a bunch of contracts are coming off the books. Guys are getting older. I think that's why they drafted him. It was more of a, hey, let's just stock the room for the future and have somebody for the future. I'm with you, but does that come at the expense of a Tanner Hudson? Like, you know this. I mean, they love Tanner. Joe Burrow loves Tanner. It's a weird place to be. And then I'm watching Tanner play late into the game last night. Like, this is probably not a good sign for you, my dude.
What did you think of Eric All Jr.? He got more than the 5 snaps that he was scheduled to get. He rolled his ankle, but he's fine. The game.
I think it's for him too. I think it's just getting some reps. Sometimes you read into stuff like, why is that guy playing late into this game of all things, or why is this guy even playing at all in this game? Because they held out not only starters but a handful of key backups on top of it. So you can read into those guys have made the team, and then you look at guys like that. I think it's more, look, Eric only played a handful of games as a rookie 2 years ago, didn't play at all last year. We got to get him some reps. I think they're in love with Eric All. I'm in love. I think Eric All's has got a chance to be the biggest wild card piece on this offense.
And also Cassius Howell, he's actually suited up, but in the wrong pants.
He did suit up. It's funny.
We knew he wasn't playing.
I was watching kind of that handshake stuff after the game, guys dapping each other up and all that stuff. I'm like, Cassius Howell, I don't even remember him playing much if he played at all, but there he is dressed. So maybe it's just a case for a kid like that of, hey, let's go through the process of warm up, getting dressed, maybe think you're going to play, and we're not going to play you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. But any of the draft picks stand out to you last night? Because I thought go ahead.
Landon Robinson did. I mean, God love him. we've talked about him for a long time. I told you I wrote a story about him back in OTAs, and we all probably have at this point done something on Landon Robinson. Super great kid, really impressed with him, and I can still remember interviewing him that day, looking at him going, and I remember we did it outside, so where his locker is, for those who don't know, it's not going to be there if he makes the team the season starts, but it's back in a corner where usually the practice squad guys are. And I couldn't help but look over at where Jermaine Burton's locker was and go, if Jermaine Burton had 2/10 of the integrity and attitude of this kid, my word, what could he have been? And Landon Robinson's been nothing but super impressive. Defensive tackles don't get sacks very much in this league. I mean, other than Aaron Donald and Geno Atkins, it's just not a position where you rack up sacks. And maybe he doesn't, if he plays 1,000 snaps this year, he gets a sack. But he got a sack and a half last night, and he popped. And to me, that's part of the process of this. If you're going to make a team, you don't only have to do your job, but occasionally I think you got to, especially if you're a 7, you got to pop. And he popped last night. It's an impressive thing to watch, and it gives you a lot of options. To your point about Chris Jenkins of, Landon Robinson is a 5th tackle. We're going to do this thing, and we're going to dangle Chris Jenkins and maybe get a tackle in return for that. And so I thought that was really important. I think it was really cool to see how he popped.
Well, and, to Zac Taylor, and he said this after the game, it's not so much about the splash plays as it is the consistency.
It is. I think you got to pop, though.
I think he's pretty – I think both. I mean, I think he popped, but every time I watch him on the field, he is not getting moved around.
No,
it's
right.
Him
that's
moving
right. No,
the bodies.
Right. Yeah,
and that's what you want to see from a defensive tackle.
Yeah, no question. It's just I just keep looking at him going, dude, you just don't look the part. We've talked about it. He looks like something out of the Flintstones where they just took a block of granite and they chisel a guy and go, there he is. And you're like, that doesn't look right. And it doesn't look right, but there he is, and he keeps doing great things, and it's really impressive.
I'm not saying he is this guy, but you brought up the name Geno Atkins. Geno Atkins was not that tall.
No, right?
I mean, he wasn't. He was sort of, Landon Robinson's height. Geno Atkins, is one of the 2 or 3 best defensive tackles ever to play for the Bengals. I don't think there's any question about that. But he has that sense to me of somebody who is explosive, somebody who's consistent down in and down out. And I just think the Bengals found themselves a diamond in the rough with him.
Well, let's not forget, it wasn't like Geno Atkins was super hyped coming out of college. He was a 4th-round pick, for goodness sakes. And yes, 4th-round picks are 3 rounds higher than 7th-round pick. But he just kept showing up and doing great things. And Landon Robinson just feels like that guy. And that's the thing. I mean, service academy kids are interesting just because the style of play is different, all the things. But you know what you're going to get from an effort, integrity, being on time, being present, all those things. You know you're getting that from that kid. And I think that's the thing that they knew they were going to get, is that with an interesting body type, with production in college, with intangibles, but also the tangibles of, look at his size, look at his strength. I mean, as a wrestler, I just thought he was a long shot only because the tackle room is so loaded with higher prospects, higher draft picks, the free agents they signed, Dexter Lawrence, that it was going to be a long shot for him to make it. But I think it's impossible now for him not to make it because, again, to go back to the other point, if you leave that kid exposed after last night and that's on tape, he's plucked.
No, I don't think there's any question about it. I think he is absolutely making the roster.
Yeah, I do too. I'm with you.
And it'll be interesting if Chris Jenkins makes the roster. Those are your 6, right? I think what you're talking about, Skinny, is you have, I think they're looking at defensive tackles 5 and 6. And right now, from what I've seen, I think it's probably going to be Landon Robinson and Chris Jenkins Jr., barring a trade. Barring a trade. Talking with Richard Skinner, longtime reporter covering the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a scorching sports summer, and you can make all of your picks on Prize Picks. Women's basketball and baseball heating up, and every football preseason game kicks off this month here on Prize Picks. And with big tennis slams and major golf tournaments, on the horizon, there is no better place for all of your summer sports picks than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. With Prize Picks, you can make picks on women's basketball, football, and even baseball. And Prize Picks makes it super easy. All you need to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats, then submit your lineup, and you can follow along with the progress right there in the app. And it makes watching the games even more exciting when every goal and every pass could win you money. The football preseason is here, and there's no better place to run your game than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. They've got star players on new teams and a rookie class ready to take over, all while teams look to get started on the biggest football season yet. Make a lineup with player stats, pick game winners, spreads, or totals, and combine your picks in the very same lineup. All on Prize Picks, now available in all 50 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Back with Richard Skinner talking all things Cincinnati Bengals, the secondary. I think this is also another interesting place of depth to watch. To me, really, 2 spots. The 4th linebacker, which is unfolding in a way I didn't think would unfold, and the safety position, again, with a name out there that we saw last year, but I think is more prominent this preseason. We'll start with Swayze Bozeman, and I know we talked about him last week, Skinny, and then move on to Russ Yeast. Your takeaways about those 2 players last night?
Yeah, so it comes down to math, right? We're talking about keeping 5 tackles and maybe even 6 tackles. If you keep 6 tackles, do you only keep 4 ends? Do you keep 5 ends and make it 11? The math there. Usually, in my opinion, it's 10, 5, 10. 10 defensive linemen, 5 linebackers because of special teams purposes, and 10 in the secondary, 4 safeties, 6 corners. I think that's where the math comes very interesting. Swayze Bozeman has done nothing but impress enough to make this team. Is he the 4th linebacker or 5th linebacker? It doesn't. I mean, if they keep 5, it really doesn't matter. I think it would be him and Joe Giles Harris and Oren Burks would be the 3 behind the 2 starters. Again, they've got some tough decisions to make, in my opinion, and I think again that's a great thing to have. Of who are you keeping at those extra positions? Who is your extra corners? Who is your 4th safety? Is it, P.J. Jules popped on? I thought made a pop play on special teams. He's a physical guy that's just, it's hard not to notice him. I don't notice Dejon Anthony. I don't notice any other safeties, to be quite honest with you. I notice P.J. Jules is noticeable, sometimes not in great ways. Sometimes he's over physical. But yeah, Swayze got talked about a bunch on the broadcast last night. I think in a good way. I think it's going to be hard to whack him. The question then is, who is the other? Is it Shaka Hayward? Is it Joe Giles Harris? I mean, Joe Giles Harris has done nothing in 2 years other than be pretty impressive when he's gotten the opportunity. So it's good problems to have, to be honest. I don't know if that's quality depth. It feels like it's the same guy that you're like, I like him and I like him, and I what's the degree of liking him more than the other liking him, right? And I think that's where they're at with some of this stuff.
We've heard time and time again, it's a cliche in football, your best ability is your availability.
Sure.
However, I think the other word I want to throw in there is dependability. And do you get the sense Zach values dependability much more than I think people think? Because I think over the years of Zac Taylor being the head coach of the Bengals, I think people think he loves the splash players, the guys that can make big plays and, cover up for some things. But I don't think people appreciate his sense of being a player that is dependable week in and week out. I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't always been there, that characteristic in Zac Taylor's coaching style. I just don't think people talk about it a lot.
Yeah, so go back to even his first year as head coach. and it was splashy because it was training camp, and any kind of even semi like leaping crazy 12-yard catch is notable in training camp. Damian Willis made some of those plays, but Damian Willis also showed like count on him. I mean, he's going to catch the ball. Damian Willis' career in the NFL was so short-lived it was ridiculous, but for that training camp, he showed those traits. And I think Zach wanted to send a message right then and there that you show up every day and do your job, we're going to keep you. And actually, that team was so bad, we're going to start you. Because Damian Willis started his very first game that Zac Taylor ever coached up in Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's the case of this. And so, while some guys pop because it's camp, I think it's also they pop, but you can count on them every. Listen, if you pop a bunch of days in camp, like Mitchell Tinsley. Mitchell Tinsley was no spectacular down the field, like, gosh, he's just running by guys every day last year in camp. But every day you would note, Mitchell Tinsley's making a catch. He's in the right place. Joe Burrow trusts him. The backup quarterbacks trust him. That's why Mitchell Tinsley made the team. And I think dependability is a huge, huge factor in all of this.
All right. You mentioned the name, Dante Myers. I think he's made the team. I don't think you can keep him off this roster.
I don't know how you can. I mean, it felt like early in the game, Josh Johnson trusted no one other than Dante Myers. Like, okay, 3rd and 6, where's Dante? There you are. Okay, I'll throw it to you. And he just keeps making play after play. An 8-yard stop route is not spectacular, right? But if it's an 8-yard stop route on 3rd and 7 and you make the right, run the right route, run it to precision, catch the ball, get the chains moving, that's notable, man. And I think he's done nothing but make the team. I think we talked about this last week. I just wonder, is it at the expense of Charlie Jones? Is it at the expense of Williams? You're not keeping more than 6 at that position.
No.
You're just not. And we know who 4 of them are, and one of them caught a touchdown pass last night, Colby Young. We just talked about Mitchell Tinsley's dependability. Is he the 5th and Dante's the 6th, or vice versa? I just don't know how you keep Dante Myers off this team. He's done nothing but show you he's dependable. I don't know if he's a great returner. He's at least a solid returner. And listen, Charlie Jones has been at times spectacular, right? I mean, he's returned a kick or a punt for a touchdown each of his years in the league. But Charlie also has the dependability gene that's not there, right? He gets hurt a lot. And so then you're doing roster machinations all the time with him. And I can't imagine Dante doesn't make this team. He has done nothing but show up every day and do good things. And last night it was almost like, with the main right receivers not on the field, it was almost like he was literally wide receiver number 1. Like he was number 1 in the progression. It felt like a bunch of times.
He just gets what I see from him on the field, and I haven't looked at the film in depth yet. Separation. That is, to me, one of the words that I think is not talked about enough amongst fans or casual observers. But when you see a receiver get separation quickly, or within like 5 yards of his route, or 10 yards, that he's doing his job and he's a special talent. I saw that twice from Dante on routes early in the game where he, ran an out route to the sideline and he got the separation. And that's why Josh Johnson looked at him, because he could see clearly the separation he was getting. That's what you want to see.
Yeah, no, to your point, you're absolutely right. And, it's not. And when people hear separation, they think of down the field separation. No, it's in short space separation.
Absolutely.
And he got that a bunch last night.
Yeah, I think there is a world where Charlie Jones doesn't make the initial 53, and I think they think that nobody's going to pick up Charlie Jones.
Yeah,
I
if
could
they
be
do. Yeah, if they do, good for them. But I don't think you're wrong, because again, you're taking a guy with an injury history, and sometimes that is worth the risk of taking that guy. But you have to. I think a team that takes Charlie has to have a definitive return need. You're not taking Charlie as a wide receiver. You're taking Charlie as a returner who can play wide receiver. It's a team that's going to have a definitive return need, and it feels like there's just a ton of return guys in this league.
What did you think of Sean Clifford? I mean, you have followed his career from his days at St. X, and hey, good for Sean Clifford last night to shout out the Bombers. He did that in his
Yes, he
post
did.
game. One thing that was really refreshing to me about Sean Clifford and talking to him last night, and it's up on my X feed, it's on the YouTube page at Jungle Roar Pod as well, is how he noticed what he learned from guys like Aaron Rodgers, studying Jordan Love when he was in Green Bay, what it was like talking to Coach LaFleur in Green Bay, what value that was to him as he developed as a young quarterback out of Penn State in this league. And now being able to watch, I mean, when you think about it, he's watched and been an understudy, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, Josh Johnson. That is a boatload of NFL experience, and he
Yeah, no,
appreciates it.
It is. I think I'm right on this story. I hope I am. If I'm wrong, somebody can call me out on it. Please do. So his senior year at St.
Oh,
X,
they will.
He was hurt a bunch.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I was doing a playoff game for Spectrum Sports, and it was St. X and Sycamore. It was one of the greatest games I've ever covered. St. X came back from a crazy deficit late. Sean in that game, and I think late in the year, he was the long. I'm pretty sure he was the long snapper on punts because of an injury. It's the damnedest thing I've ever watched. Like, this guy was a standout quarterback who was going to Penn State and like long snapping for punts. I think he's a guy who just loves ball. You know how much Zac Taylor loves guys who love ball. He's not making this team as a third quarterback, but I do believe it's the perfect world where he gets cut, doesn't get picked up, perfect stash guy for practice squad, and I think that's a perfect thing. But I did think he showed some things last night. He also showed a little inaccuracy. The interception he threw was not a very good ball. I mean, it was behind the receiver on the out route.
And it was underthrown. I mean, it was easy for the corner
correct.
to undercut and pick off.
But if you look at his raw numbers, other than the pick, he performed more than admirably. It's a great story. Obviously, a local guy. We always root for the local guys. So, again, he's not going to – I don't think he beats Josh Johnson out. I think Josh did more than enough last night to say that's the third quarterback. They're also not going to keep Josh Johnson. So if Josh gets exposed, does Sean then get brought back as the three? I think it's a good spot to be in. Like, your third and fourth guy, one of those guys, maybe even both, are your practice squad guy. And I think that at least if something happens where a team goes, well, Josh Johnson's got experience and he's out there exposed, let's pluck him and he becomes our 2 or 3. You have an option there, and I think that's a good thing.
I do too. Going over the quarterback numbers from last night, both were actually very impressive. Josh Johnson, 15 of 23, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, a 113 passer rating. Sean Clifford, 10 of 15, 126, did throw the 1 pick, but he also threw a touchdown and an 87.1 passer rating. It was, for a game that didn't have Joe Burrow or Joe Flacco, I was pleasantly surprised with the quarterback play last night.
I thought initially it could have been a disaster.
I had my doubts.
and I'll say this. I mean, they blitzed Josh a couple times early in the game, and the offensive line held up. He got it out of his hand fast. He knows what it takes to play the position. He is probably one of the most fascinating stories in the NFL to just think about all the different teams. This is his third go-round with the Bengals alone. And he keeps chugging. He still looks like he's in great shape. Still got some arm talent. Processed things quickly last night. If God forbid something happens to Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco, I don't think you're winning many games with Josh Johnson at quarterback, but at least it's a capable guy.
What have you? The Bengals ran it 20 times yesterday for 64 yards. Granted, they did not chase Brown. They didn't have Samaje Perine. Taj Brooks, he ran it 3 times for 16 yards. Think their run game's in good shape heading into the season?
I don't know. I can't base it on last night because none of those guys are going to play in the opener, barring an injury. But I do think it's in good shape. I think if you just roll over what they did at the end of last year for the final 8-9 games and what Chase did, I do think that they are. I thought Taj Brooks ran hard. I don't think there were a lot of holes to run through. There were no pop plays out of that. There were a couple of end arounds that factored in. I'll be honest with you, I was surprised that they threw it as much as they did and only ran it the 20 times, to your point, Mike. And maybe they were looking to say, all right, let's see what these guys can do in pass pro. Because that's the biggest part for us is can they pass block and
that's what they needed to see from the tackles. That's
and I think that's exactly I think that's what it was. But yeah, I was a little surprised that they only ran it 20 times. Now maybe in this last preseason game on Friday night they run it 45 times, and that's possible.
Running clock, please.
Yes, exactly.
Look, I know we talked about Dante Myers a lot, and you did touch on Colby Young. Colby Young is fascinating to me as a rookie. He makes the splash play early, but he only goes 1 for 5 on targets early in the game. Then he finished out the first half, I think, in terrific fashion. Made a couple of key grabs. He had the touchdown. What I'm seeing from Colby Young, that I did not see from the wide receiver who shall not be named, Jermaine Burton, is his ability to make in-game adjustments and be able to get open. And I saw that last night where he got open, but he also made the catch. And I thought that was a big part of his game last night.
Well, the touchdown reception to me was kind of a veteran savvy thing. Like you see the ball in the air, the corner's in trail technique, the corner thinks he has you, right? But you haven't put your last burst on. And I think that's the big part sometimes of when do you make that burst. It's one thing to run by a corner. Well, if you run by a corner early enough and the ball's not in the air, the corner has a chance to catch up. If you run past the corner when you're supposed to run past the corner, that makes a big difference. And I thought he did that on the touchdown reception. Like he saw the ball in the air, corner's in trail technique, corner doesn't see the ball. You don't give your tell too early because you don't want to do that either because he can get his arms up, get his head around, all those things. His late burst, I think, was the difference in that touchdown reception. I thought that was awful savvy.
I did too. It was nice to see Noah Thomas make a nice play on a pass from Sean Clifford as well, Skinny.
I think he's a nice practice squad guy to have. Like that guy's got some potential. He's not going to get plucked, in my opinion. But the potential is there that if you have to eventually move him up, there's a skill set there, and I think that was a good UDFA for them to land him. And maybe part of it was they landed him because they were hot on Colby Young, comes from the same school. But yeah, I think he's a perfect practice squad guy to have.
Ho hum, another 58-yard field goal from Evan McPherson. The man, I mean, knock wood. What were you going to say? Well, what?
No, I'd say I was driving from dinner last night, and I was listening to a little bit of the pregame show, and Dan Horde mentioned that Evan at the very last kick of pregame drilled a 62-yarder. That's he's done those things. He drilled the 65 or 67-yarder in the family practice night or the stadium practice night.
Right.
We've seen him do things like that before. He drilled a 67-yarder in Green Bay last year. They got called off. But, yeah, I mean, it feels almost automatic from anywhere. And I go back to I think his comfortability with the same operation finally for a second straight year is just huge for him. Just huge.
Yeah, I do too. I want to wrap it up because, as you can tell, I'm playing. If you're watching this on YouTube,
the sun's popping in,
and there's golf to be played. Skinny.
Yes, there is. I know
golf
that.
To be played. We did not ask you, and I did not ask you your thoughts on Joe Burrow's now or never comments. I asked Zach after the game last night, and he said we're just keeping it game to game. It was interesting the reply to that question for me, Skinny, because he's not going to feed into this. And I think they're all done talking about the urgency, and everybody knows what's at stake this year. And I think that was Zac Taylor's way of saying, look, Joe said what he said. We understand why he said it, but now it's on to the business of really getting ready for the game coming up next week.
Yeah, but the thing is, and national media loves to do these kind of things. I get it. I mean, there's always a narrative and a talking point that you got to have. It's not the first time he's talked about urgency. He talked about urgency
No,
3 months
that's what
ago.
I said.
I mean, this has been multiple times, and I think it's just him reiterating the urgency. And why shouldn't he or they or them or all of them have that urgency? It's not the urgency of you better do it or I'm going to leave. I think that's the narrative that people want to keep buying into. I think his narrative is more. I just think he reiterated a point he's reiterated, or not reiterated. He reiterated a point he's talked about already this offseason, and he's not wrong. It's not like all of a sudden this is like, man, this is year 2 and this guy's a nut. No, man, he knows. I'm in year 7. Let's get going here. Let's do this. And I wasn't alarmed by it. I wasn't like, he's sending another message. No, he's just reiterating a point he's made already.
I think what he wants to do, and the reason he did say it, because he never says anything by accident, Skinny.
No, right, that's right.
He wants to remind everybody in the locker room that's going to hear this, I'm serious about winning and urgent. I want everybody's focus to be on winning, not playing well. Winning, doing whatever it takes, making whatever preparation you need to make from week to week to go out and win the football game that weekend. And that's what Zach was saying after the game in his own way, I thought, Skinny.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's where I just think sometimes people from the outside read into stuff way too much.
But that's, I wrote about this on Saturday that, after a couple of days to digest what he said on Thursday, like you said, the national media is going to have their narrative. They're going to say what they're going to say. They're going to want to create the noise because that's what sells. That's what clicks on social media. I get all of that. But this is, like you said, and I wrote this, nothing new. This is just a continuation of what he's been saying. To me, it was more important about him taking more of a leadership role. When he said that, I think it was in May or June before taking off for the summer. He said, maybe I need to be mean. Maybe I need to be mean Joe Burrow and let guys know, if you guys make mistakes constantly and make the same mistakes game after game after game, that's when I'm going to come down on you.
And I wonder, and I wasn't there to see it. You were. You might have been on the other field when it happened, but the Bears defensive end, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. It's too hard to pronounce. But yes. Was it more him being a nice guy to, I got there and I grab you, or was it more I'm going to grab you and I could have slung you to the turf? And maybe Joe made a big deal of that just to see what the reaction was of like, are we going to fight, or are we just going to go, oh, it's a joint practice and he didn't knock me down? And maybe that was a point to be made there too of, listen, man, you're not supposed to touch me, so don't touch me. And maybe the poor defensive end for the Bears is like, dude, I probably could have clobbered you and I grabbed you to make sure I didn't kill you. But at the same time, there's always points to be made. I think he's trying to make a point of, what are we doing here? Are we gonna stand for this stuff, or are we gonna back down to this stuff?
So, and I think most football players in scrums like this, Ted Karras actually had a good comment and some good conversation about this. When you're in the heat of battle, it is about protecting your teammate.
Sure.
But once that moment clears, and as long as there's like nobody going after knees or
right.
taking helmets off like the Rams joint practice and start hammering people on top of the head, as long as it doesn't elevate to that, football players in the heat of battle, even if it's joint practice, they understand that. Any other takeaways for you from Saturday night?
No, I mean, again, it's a bunch of backups playing, but at the same time, I think that's important to watch, and hopefully when it goes well, you have really hard decisions to make. And I think they've got hard decisions to make. I think the one thing coming out of this, Mike, is where do they stand at the tackle position on offense? I mean, where do they decide to do, especially with cut-down days looming in a couple weeks? Let's not forget, go back to last year, Dalton Risner didn't come in till really, really late and had to play in the opener and had to start soon after, and it wasn't good. Hopefully the Bengals aren't in that case. This is more of a depth piece, but I'm super fascinated to see what they think about the tackle position after last night and what they do at that spot.
All right, he is Richard Skinner, does a fabulous job covering all things Cincinnati Bengals, longtime Bengal reporter. Please follow his stuff online. My name is Mike Petraglia, Trags. You can follow me on the X at Trags, Trags, as well as CLNS Cincy with a Y.com. My recap of the game and biggest takeaways from the game on Saturday night. 27-9 Bengals win is up there right now. Bengals conclude the preseason in Philadelphia. I'll be there, also visiting family while I am there, so that's 2 for 1 for me. But I will be in Philadelphia for the final preseason game on Friday. Then 48 hours after that game, less than 48 hours, it is NFL cut down to 53. We'll have a lot to talk about between now and then. Want to thank our great sponsors. Our sponsor, as always, Prize Picks. And until next time, you know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.